Oddly enough, today's talk is about praise, and what I'm about to read to you, you may say, really? This Bible reading is not a pick-me-up. Just thought I'd let you know in advance. It comes from 2 Kings 25. Bless you.
Bless you.
And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon, and in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, oh man, I thought I had this one down, I misread it. Nebu, Kadadazezer. Okay, you're a Bible person. How do you pronounce it? Nebuchadnezzar, thank you.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Bible person in the kitchen. Nebuchadnezzar, hi.
Character of the Matrix.
King of Babylon came with all his army against Jerusalem. Jerusalem metaphysically means peace. Came with all his army against peace. And laid siege to it. And they built siege works against it round about. So the city was besieged till the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food. Then a breach was made in the city. The king with all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate, between the two walls by the king's garden through the Chaldeans, or though the Chaldeans were around the city, and they went in the direction of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered. Then they captured the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah, who passed sentence upon him. They slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes and put out the eyes of Zedekiah and bound him in fetters and took him to Babylon. In the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King
Nebuchadnezzar.
Thank you, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the bodyguard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and he burned the house of the Lord. And the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem, every great house he burned down. And all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls around Jerusalem, and the rest of the city, or the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the deserters who had deserted to the king of Babylon, together with the rest of the multitude,
Nebuchadnezzar.
on the captain of the guard carried into exile. But the captain of the guard left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowmen. And the pillars of bronze that were in the house of the Lord, and the stands in the bronze sea that were in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans broke in pieces and carried away the bronze to Babylon. And they took away the pots and the shovels and the snuffers and the dishes for incense and all the vessels of bronze used in the temple service. The fire pans also and the bowls. What was of gold the captain of the guard took away as gold, and what was of silver as silver. And for the 2 pillars, the one sea and the stands, which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord, the bronze of all the vessels was beyond weight. The height of the one pillar was 18 cubits, and upon it was a capital of bronze. The height of the capital was 3 cubits. A network and pomegranates, all of bronze, were upon the capital round about. And the captain of the guard took Sarah and chief priest and Zephaniah and the second priest and the 3 keepers of the threshold, and from the city he took an officer who had been in command of the men of the war. And finally they took Judah, who was taken into exile out of its land. Kenneth, are you ready? Now, isn't that, I don't know why people aren't into the Bible. Why do you not read this every day of your life? It's a real pick-me-up, isn't it? And all of that can be metaphysically explained. All of that is about forgetting about God and worshiping the world. Every bit of that is a result of worshiping the world. Thought I'd read a little metaphysical interpretation for you. It says here, how does our neglect of praise affect us? It puts us at variance with divine law and brings us into captivity to material forces. When the world itself and my rules of the world are more important than spirit, I'm never at peace. Even though I'm doing it all to get peace. You know, let's take the credit card out, because if I buy this, then I'll be at peace. Oh, now I have to buy this, now I have to buy this. And if I attack you, and if I make you be different, then maybe I'll be at peace. You know, I am rather shocked and appalled at what the world does to each other now, these days. Not just this country, everywhere. The cruelty, man's inhumanity to man, that we fret over things. I was listening to Lewis Black the other day, and he was talking about how one of our former presidents back a while back was not going to let gay marriage happen, same-sex marriage happen. And he said, did you forget 9/11 already? After 9/11, we're going to care who marries who? You know, when so many things have happened, and we're going to care about what bathrooms we use. You know, a woman was ripped from a bathroom yesterday in North Carolina. They thought she was a transsexual. They ripped her out in the middle of going to the bathroom, put her in jail, didn't take her purse, so it took hours to find out she was a woman. What? Yes. When I watched Passion of the Christ, the movie, and at the end, and I was with a bunch of Christians in their home. It was a pre-viewing to raise money for Mel Gibson's company. We didn't give money. We weren't asked to give money. They knew we couldn't give that kind of money. But I watched this movie and it was awful. And afterwards people said, oh, wasn't that wonderful? Wasn't that wonderful what they showed? And I said, no. And they said, but why not? I said, well, quite frankly, if I didn't know about Jesus before I went in, I didn't know about him when I left. What I learned about was man's inhumanity to man. That was 2 hours of beating a man up a hill for his faith. No, not for his faith. For their fear of the freedom he offered. We offer freedom of thinking. That's what we do here at Unity. We offer every single individual, not talking about political beliefs, we're talking about individual, human beliefs, freedom to express health, freedom to express harmony, freedom to express being. And it doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what your religions have been, because almost none of us are here in our original religion. It doesn't matter any of that. What matters is I was told I'm allowed to be healthy 100% of the time. I was told I'm allowed to be wealthy 100% of the time. I was told I could love everyone 100% of the time. Best of all, I was told I could love myself 100% of the time. Not 99%. I could have it 100% of the time, and I didn't have to be good to get it. I was told I was already good, and all I had to do was accept that. I was told I didn't have to make you change. I didn't have to make my mother change. I didn't have to make my father change. I didn't have to make my past, the facts of my past, be different in order to experience my good 100% of the time. Now, it says here, why did Zedekiah the king meet such terrible reverses? And it says that Zedekiah the king met reverses because he was not loyal to divine principle. I was told I had to apply divine principle 100% of the time. To experience health 100% of the time. To experience wealth 100% of the time. To experience harmony 100% of the time. I had to apply divine principle 100% of the time. I can't afford to worship this or that or you any percent of the time. I can enjoy, I can appreciate, I can participate, but I cannot make you more important than principle. I cannot make my false beliefs more important than principle. I cannot be cruel some of the time in order to experience love all of the time. I can't. If I want what was promised to me, I fall short of the ideal. I don't know about you. Yes, I do. But I'll talk about me right now. I fall short of the ideal. And the main ones I get really upset with are the cruel ones. Are the ones who use God as their defender for cruelty. There was a man in North Carolina again last year, a tow truck driver, who left a disabled woman on the side of the road because she had a bumper sticker on the back of her car that pronounced a liberal candidate. And he said, "Oh, I can't, I'm a Christian. I don't believe in abortion, and so I can't tow this woman." And by law, he was protected to leave a disabled woman on the side of the road. Now, what do I have to do in my thinking to get to peace, to apply 100% of the time? Where do I, oh, that's good. No, that's not what we mean by all is good in unity. There's an opportunity to see correctly, and sometimes that opportunity takes work. When I see another being, or if I am cruel to another being. There are a couple of people very upset with me this past week at Unity Village. Two mentors who are triangulating all over the place because I have not invited them into the policy team. That someone who hasn't been on the team as long as they have was invited in when we had an opening this year, and we immediately invited this other woman in because I knew she would be harmonious in our team. And these other two women I consider a burden because I don't want to, while I'm serving on a team, I don't want to have to keep going back and walking on eggs and taking care of them. They're welcome to be a mentor, they're welcome to be in the big picture, but I didn't want them on the small team where we do. Unfortunately, they've yet to ask me why. Because I would tell them. I wouldn't be unkind about it, but I would be clear. You're not a good fit for our team. It doesn't make you the unpopular child, but doesn't that what it feels like? So I'm sure some of us know. I know what it's like to not be picked anywhere near first. I know what it's like to not be invited to a party that I didn't even want to go to, but I wanted to be asked. I know what it's like to see a group of people talking over there and knowing I would not fit in, and I wish that I did. I know what all of that is like, and even with the success I'm experiencing at this point in my life, there are still spots where I think, they don't want me. And it hurts my feelings. And it feels cruel, and it feels unkind. When actually it's, I don't know what it is, but it's my chance to go within and forgive myself for being there in that time and in that place. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he was a prison camp survivor. And he lived to go on to become a writer and a therapist. But when he was taken, he and his family, into the prison camps, and he had a manuscript he had written, and he hid it. And everywhere he managed to hide this for a long time. And his wife was killed, his child was killed. So this manuscript. And finally they found it and they took it and destroyed it. And he had to think on that. And what he realized is they could take everything but his thoughts. The cruel people, the mean people, the people who have no idea that we are one. The people who have because you have to force yourself to forget the good that you are in order to do an unkind thing to another human being. You must forget yourself in order to do an unkind thing to another human being. When I snapped at David at home, I had to forget who I was so I could forget who he was in order to objectify him that way. When I objectify another driver on the road. I had to forget who I was so I could forget who they are. And Viktor Frankl, what he speaks of, he had to remember who he was. He looked at it a different way. Oh, I have to remember who I am on this journey, and they can't take that away. So many of us, well, I don't know many of us, some of us had very cruel parents. Some of us had cruel aunts and uncles. You know, people who forgot who they were so that they could forget who we were when we were children. And we've seen our families, perhaps ourselves, forget who we ourselves are or they are in order to be cruel to the neighbor, in order to have an opinion. And all of this comes down to forgetting to praise. To praise. To praise your source. To praise the source of anything that you like. It doesn't do it for the sake of the source. I don't praise God for God's sake. I don't praise Spirit for Spirit's sake. I do it for mine so that I can start to remember again. Because I am desperate to remember again my source, my supply. And what I praise multiplies. It expands. It gets bigger. And so you see, if we start to praise the flowers, praise the tiniest bit of light, praise the pennies in your pocket so that they may turn into nickels, and praise the nickels so they may turn into quarters, praise the quarters so they may turn into dollars, and so on and so forth. Praise the light in another being's face. Whether you like the being or not, find a way to praise the light. Put the personality aside so that you may praise the light. As Kevin said, step back and look again. Step back and look again. Step back and look again. With those two women at field licensing, I kept praying, how do I see them in love? How do I? Because I was annoyed. I gotta tell you, I was experiencing great annoyance and resentment. You know, it's all a great week except for these two people. Why have to go berserk at the end? And then I thought, but how do I love? My good friend Reverend Russell Highland, who has spoken here, he did the graduation speech this year, and he spoke. Actually, I sent him my newsletter from this week, our newsletter about Know You Are Loved. Because his ministry is right outside of Washington, D.C. And a lot going on there. I don't know if you know it, but there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. A lot of mixed emotions and what have you. And his congregation is a part of that. It's a very diverse congregation. Part of their property is rented to a Turkish school. You know, there's a lot of multicultural. And since some things have happened, you know, we experience it. And so I sent him the newsletter that said, Know You Are Loved. Because when you know you are loved, there's hope. And he incorporated that into the graduation speech for the graduates about when you forget you are loved, remember to know that you are loved. You know, when you don't find as many dollars in your pocket as you would like, take the time to remember, oh, but I am loved. When you don't find the sunshine in the sky you were hoping for today, take the moment to, but I am loved. Because I cannot not be loved in truth. When your legs aren't doing what you hoped for today, to remember, but I am loved. When your family isn't cooperating, or your friends aren't cooperating, or life doesn't seem to be cooperating, when people aren't calling back and writing back, when people don't look at you the way you'd hope they would look today, wait a minute, but I am loved, because I cannot not be loved. And that's the beginning of praising that is praising love. That is praising, because what you pray multiplies. And you really don't want to praise cruelty. You really don't want to praise lack. And you say, but I'm not doing that. Well, our complaints and our worries is a form of praise. And it's not, oh, I shouldn't say that. What's your goal in talking about things? What is your goal when you talk about your troubles? Is it to heal, or is it to see it, to maintain it, to maintain the problem, to maintain, life is so hard. I just have to complain about it all the time, or otherwise I might drop dead. So it's sometimes how we think. I'm going to die if I don't. Well, I might live better if I set a new intention of praise. And it doesn't mean, oh, I'm so glad this is happening, when I'm clearly not glad this is happening. But how do I see it correctly? To call upon Spirit. There's one thing here I liked, and I thought I wrote it down. Oh, what empowers us to recognize what is for our well-being and happiness? Spiritual consciousness alone possesses this power. What is the principal point in today's lesson? The principal point in today's lesson is the relation that the will, or the king, bears to divine justice. The name Zedekiah means justice of God. When a person's thoughts and acts do not conform to the law of spirit, what results? When a person's thoughts and acts do not conform to the law of spirit, he meets with disaster as the judgment or the exact results of his thoughts. Now, this is not a person coming after us. This is just the result of forgetting. When I forget, I need to quickly get back into praise. I must quickly step back and find light. I have to. In the song, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Doesn't mean I gotta wait for them to start the peace. I must start the peace, even if I don't know what the long-term effects are. If I take a moment to meditate, to pray, to praise something, to praise some piece of good that is for the good of all. Would you be okay if your good were for the good of all? Does anyone get to be hurt by your good? Is there any act of cruelty taking place in the world because of the good that you perceive? The good that you desire, would it enable you or anyone else to forget the good that they are? If it is, you need a new good. You need a new goal. That's why I like New Thought. There's nobody left out. It's not good for me and my team, but not good for you and your team. I had no desire to hurt these women by not bringing them on our policy team. Their demonstrations, however, do not show that they're right for the team. Does that mean they should suffer? Does that mean that, no, you got to responsibly show up? But they weren't shunned, and I'm still praying for the way to call them up and talk with them to have a healing this week, so that clarity can be made and understanding may be reached, instead of an imagination that says, he doesn't like me, I'm unloved. They don't like me, I'm unloved. I've done something bad and I don't know what I did because nobody will tell me. Because sometimes we as children are afraid to reach out. We're afraid to say, what did I do? Did I do something? And we as adults say, well, they should ask. That was my first response. Well, they asked other people and it came back to me. How do I react in love? How do I step back and say these women are worthy of the whole kingdom? Because I want to know that I am worthy of the whole kingdom, not just part, but the whole kingdom. And so, in these moments, these minutes, these hours, these weeks ahead in your life, would you consider praising the whole ideal? That we don't narrow it down to our church. We don't narrow it down to our family or ourselves. We don't narrow it down to our church. We don't narrow it down to our town. We don't narrow it down to our country. We don't narrow it down to just some countries. We open up to the whole universe that is a mass of spiritual beings on a spiritual journey. And I'm willing that all know joy. And they don't have to think like I do, but they know joy, they know peace, they know prosperity, they know well-being. Because when we all know that, we're not going to hurt each other anymore. So it is.